Hello everyone, welcome to Radically Loved Radio. I wanted to create a place where people can go to get inspired, get motivated, or find some clarity and get tools to create a radically loved life. I will do my best to provide information on a variety of subjects, including yoga, holistic health, life coaching, spirituality, meditation, and overall mindful living. Each episode will bring you some of the world's best spiritual leaders, entrepreneurs, yoga teachers, coaches, along with some of my closest friends, and we will talk about their life experiences and journeys to create something more out of their lives and how they continue to grow to make that happen. Thanks for listening. Jill Willard was born with unique ability for predicting the future and intuiting the experiences of others. In addition to giving readings for clients, she has trained corporate executives, pro athletes, and other thought leaders in honing in their intuitive skills. She is such an incredible teacher and an incredibly intuitive being, and I cannot wait for you to listen to our podcast.
You know, I believe that we are all very intuitive and we all have it. It's a part of our brain. I've said this for a long time. I think science is finally catching up. It's either the right side of the brain of that 97% we don't use. I think it's very connected to us opening it through our limbic system of calming. Mm-hmm. So my plight has always been, since I was young, was a very happy, calm kid. My nature was a little different than my nurture. God bless my parents. I don't think anyone would know what to do with someone as intellectual as I am, as Aquarian as I am, and then you throw in the intuition. And I really think I inherited part of this my Italian grandmother had, my mother's mom. And so, you know, it's just, but I loved growing up just completely normal, 2.2 kids in our family, Northern California. So that gave me that foundation to just kind of keep an internal, grow with it, kind of play in the trees, play sport, do fine in school. And then in my and then I went to college at an ocean town, opened up some more, came down to Manhattan Beach, California. Been here now a couple decades at least. So I could just be one with the ocean and the quiet. So it kept opening. And friends here, I think, you know, being a part of Los Angeles, it's very innovative on this coast, as you know. And trust me, you know, there's good gifts everywhere in the nation, but one thing here is the openness. So I felt normal and not normal. Anyway, girlfriends brought me forward to great healers and thought leaders who helped me kind of admit I had this to this degree, this intuition, and that was my plight. And then I came forward doing it professionally about 10 years ago now, and it's been great. And then the mediumship stuff happened, which some people know, and you know, we talked about that in the book, especially at the end of the book. We actually took out the book that Michael Jackson was the second one to come in right after he passed. I talked about the first soul that came in the next day. Michael was the second, who was just such a personality, and he said all these facts that came through. So that was my plight. When I started seeing how factual it came in, people would think it was me. I'm like, I'm not that smart. It's coming in from somewhere, right?
Yeah, totally.
Anyway.
But that is like, that's so incredible. And again, it's like, I feel like I want to ask you so many different questions, and it's like, doesn't even do that little tidbit that you just told us doesn't even do everything that you've done and are doing in the world justice. So we'll try and dive in a little bit more into, we can talk about your book first, because Intuitive Being, this is a book about connecting with your spirit, finding your center, and choosing an intentional life, which, you know, for the people that listen to this podcast or, you know, follow what I do, I mean, this is really all encompassing. And you have an incredible TED Talk as well, right? Where you talk. So like, I have a feeling you're not going to say these things, so I'm like, I've got to let everyone know, you know, what you're doing. And so I want you to just tell us a little bit about, you know, what inspired this book to come to fruition in all the work that you've been doing.
Oh, appreciate you, Rob. That is so kind. What inspired me is exactly, I believe we all have this awareness, and we've joked we could call a book whole being or human being. It doesn't have to just be intuitive being, right? And I honor you so much because, you know, the book's doing well. It's doing well. But some people are like, oh, Jill repeats herself. I have to get us to bring our emotional wall down. You know, I actually don't think we're repeating. We kept the book so tight, but I know for some that's hard because of our emotional side.
Mm-hmm.
And then the book really was because I was doing hundreds and now thousands of readings, and the information was so rich and simple. I
Yeah.
know we all want a pill or we want it to go away in a therapy session, meaning our old fears or ourself or our ego, right? But this book shows how to open up and like be so present and make life so rich. It's simple and not at the same time, but we're the only ones that can do it.
Yeah.
And just doing some of these things just a little bit, it was kind of like a support or an assist for everyone to kind of step into this richer life for themselves. And so that was the intention. And then it was all this knowledge that I got to witness and people in readings got to witness. And it made sense, but we don't do it, or we do chunks of it, or we kind of focus on one aspect like the food, the physical, and the spiritual. So when you bring it together, it just makes this like this whole amazing, piece of life. And so that was the intention. And we used to call it a pamphlet because when people come to readings, they wanted more and more. And so I write longer emails or this or that. And it just started to form itself. I originally wrote it in 2011 against Oprah's fence. I don't think she even knows this, but their friends lived in Montecito, and I worked for them back when I was in school. And we stayed a summer up there with two of our kids. And I wrote this right against her fence on their property. Oprah had moved in after they had lived there a long time. They became friends. Never went to her property. It was right near where Super Soul Sunday was filmed. You could kind of see through the fence. Anyway, or see that spot. And then it became Super Soul Sunday. But point is, O Magazine did an article that month. It was August or September. Someone told me and said similar things that I was writing at the time against the fence. And I mentioned the story because I noticed in that moment, this is information for all of us. It's not mine. I'm not the only one that knows it or can tap in. It's just what's coming down from the heavens or intellect or, our guides or God, whatever we want to call it. And so when I started to see all that synchronicity, I said, we've got to get this out and we've got to be fearless and also give it completely. Don't hold any of it. Don't try to keep it, and that's what our culture does as the competitors in our culture. Like, let me have it. You can't have it.
Yeah.
I said, no way. So we busted it through in the book.
And there's so much, with all of that and, the importance of intuition and how you write about it and how you do it out in the world. And I think that that's a huge obstacle in our society that we're facing now, right? It's this lack mentality, right? Like there's not enough. And so how do you think that mentality, and I know you talk about, the mind and like the brain and how it works, how does that type of mentality affect our intuition?
Brilliant. So affects our intuition because our intuition isn't in that part of the brain. So I believe the left brain and kind of the back, some people call it lizard brain or primitive brain, we're in fight or flight a lot. That's left side. We're overthinking. That's left side of the brain. We are in lack. So in fight or flight or in the competitor brain, someone wins, someone loses, someone has, someone doesn't. Right. And I really think that's a disharmony in the second energy center, and we're stuck there. So why we're stuck there is we choose our thoughts, we choose our brainwaves, we choose what we think, and we think there's lack. That's left brain. Intuition's right brain, connective. There's enough for everyone because there is, as we know. We could all go plant seeds tomorrow and really help with hunger. We could go over. I mean, I'm not making it black and white where everyone should quit their job because black and white thinking is also left brain. So when I talk to people like, Jill, I can't do that. I'm like, go grow rosemary and give it to 5 neighbors. It's the same thing. Get them to feel better about themselves so they get out of being competitive, whatever it is. So to answer your question, intuition isn't in that side and in that part. So we're not using it. We're so tilted left. That's physical and mental. I believe intuition is in the spiritual and in the emotional, meaning the soul and the connectivity of us all. The golden rule, treat others like you'd like to be treated. We don't do it. And then we don't touch our intuition. We make a choice every day to say, I'm going to choose myself. I'm going to choose my ego instead of intuition. So I'm going to choose lack. I'm going to choose gain instead of my intuition. And we're not in those times anymore. Around 2012, it showed that gig is over. Patriarch is over for all of us, right?
Yeah.
But we haven't quite got the memo, which is why we're so pulled right now, because we're holding on to some yucky stuff from like the 50s and 60s, and that's all brain. That's all past patterning, still acting out. That's left. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no intuition could come in because intuition says stop, pause.
Yeah.
Please, go ahead.
No, this is all of what we're talking about is the importance
Mhm.
of that voice or that intuition, and having the sensitivity to our own gifts and being able to access that. And so, what are some ways that we can begin to get out of that, not that negative mindset? And for me, it's like using words or
Yes.
using like positive affirmations, even when things are negative, like using positive ways of saying it is
Yeah.
really helpful, right? So, how do you think we can
Yes.
begin to remove those blocks?
Oh, I love you say that. So I know people laugh, but the easiest way right now is to drink a little more water and breathe deeper, focusing on both your nostrils, right? Just like breathing in
Yeah.
and breathing into through both sides of your neck and your thyroid, down both sides of the lungs as deep as you can and get into your diaphragm. So really expanding your belly or your stomach, which many don't want to do, especially women, and like let go there, breathe all the way in. You exhale all the way out and you can make the exhale longer. And some people like numbers. So you can do numbers if you're a numbers person, or you can just know in your gut, okay, I'm exhaling out longer intuitively or instinctively. And that starts to get you to calm the adrenaline, the adrenals, the nervous system, the cortisol, insulin, that fight or flight in the left brain we thrive on. So you do that for 2, 3 minutes, you do feel better. Now, the first day you do it or the first moment, it might only last for 30 seconds or a minute because then you're like, oh, this person did this, or oh, I've got to race to the next meeting, or oh, I'm mad at my partner, or oh, I have to go get my kids' school supplies. And I
Mm-hmm.
try to say, you can do the deep breathing through everything you're saying. We just forget. So we go high into our chest, which is a form of, we were just talking about this with a dear friend, Layla, yesterday. We do these events at Kit and Ace now. And she called it, we hyperventilate. And I never thought about it that way because I think hyperventilating, like the extreme of, oh my gosh, I'm going to pass out from being
Mm-hmm.
in a sport or being in the sun.
Yeah.
But she's like, no, energetically we do that. I'm like, you are brilliant. She's
Wow.
great about the autonomy. So, right, or the anatomy part,
Yeah.
pardon me. So there's that. That's one part. And then the other part that I talk on, which people cannot stand, is forgiveness, letting go. So who are you
Oh
mad at?
my
Who's in the
goodness.
middle in your left brain,
Uh,
right? It's
we
in your DNA,
yeah.
and it changes your cells when you let go. Yeah, so
I mean,
fabulous.
that's a whole like other
It is.
segment
It
on
is.
letting go
You
because
can write a list down and put it away of all the people you need to forgive or say sorry to.
I mean
Any step will
so
do.
that's a great exercise, right? So what can we do to begin to let
Mhm.
that go?
Yeah. Write a list. Get it out so you witness it, because then that's what I meant about pause. I say sometimes that we're a self and the soul, and our soul's been covered, and that's where our intuition is. Think deep within, or the center of our being. We have these layers of things that happen to us, so that's kind of what our experience. So when you can start to notice your experience, and it's your soul watching yourself or watching your experience, then you have a space between, even if it's just minute, to let the light in. The more you grow that space, you get less ego and you go, oh my gosh, I need to apologize. Or, oh my gosh, I need to, with
Mm,
love, not be in that group anymore, but with love, not oh, they're this or that. Just,
yeah.
it's good for all of us that I move on, or it's good that I mirror to my children. I'm not going to gossip or whatever it is, because that's all coming back and that's all hitting the adrenaline, which is like a drug. So you see all the parallels, and the simplicity yet can be hard once you see these little actions start to cause pause, calm, and then we notice when we're doing it, like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I'm about to think about someone, or I'm about to say something.
Yeah.
And then you don't. And then you're kind of like your older self to your younger self, or big sister to your younger. Look at it going, you know what, let's not do this.
Yeah.
And that's that partnership in the brain we talk about a lot, right? We're
Yeah.
more than one part. When people say be mindful, there's different parts of the mind. So I say at least divide it in two, of left brain, right brain, so you've got like a butterfly or a side of you that's going to overanalyze, and a side of you that says, let's calm.
Yeah.
So just starting to get to know the spaces there.
Yeah, I love that. And I actually want to just kind of add on to that because you talk a lot about the
Yes.
female, the feminine energy. And so, feminine and masculine energy, how do they apply to intuitive being touching, getting more in touch with your intuition and, the way that we operate in the world as far as like energy?
Oh gosh, I love your questions. You're so wise. So it's amazing. So, because a lot of people say, Jill, you must like only be. I am a little too feminine. Let's be honest, and I'm working on that. But just a little too soft. But my point is, I don't use the left brain enough because I kind of turned that off by the time I was 8 or 9 because I was mad because I was so intuitive when I was little. I knew like the Native Americans really weren't this way. Martin Luther King Jr. Like I just was that smart kid that was like, the history is not even really how we're writing it, So I kind of turned off the intellect at times, the masculine side of me. Even in sports, I was good at sports. I'm like, I don't want to take the ball away from my good friend, So we're talking because people who might be listening know I can be too feminine in that sense. But the balance, and this is why I want to honor people that are more in their masculine. It's a good. It's okay. The balance is that the left brain of masculine is the doer, and then the right brain is the beer, and they have to be 50-50, or don't have to, but think of your body. If one side's, more energetic or running higher, the other side's going to be depleted. Just like if you hurt your left shoulder, your right hip or your right, rib can compensate because we're off. So it's the same here. So to be intuitive and to execute it, to go do, you have to be up. And that's what I've been upping, to go out and do readings or go out and help people and be honest and be brave because it's not easy. The more intuitive we are, the more we know. We're not as ignorant.
Yeah.
What do you do once you have that being intuitive energy?
Yeah.
It's a partnership. So just want it in balance. And then, like we talk about in the book with the 4 aspects of being, or we wrote an article in group called The 4 Bodies, right? Yeah. It's about making sure physical, mental is half the pie. It's important. Make it a fourth and a fourth of the pie. But emotional needs to be a fourth, and spiritual. And this is also so your body stays healthy. Because if you're too overly mental and physical, you lose lubrication in the joints, you age more rapidly, you become too masculine. Even the women, they deplete their body with weight or shiny hair or nails, right? Or teeth, eyes, all that bone, right? So you don't want to be too masculine and deprive yourself like we do in our culture. We celebrate to completely demolishing our body, like in sport and beauty and all of it, right? So then the emotional, the spiritual knows you have to have your nutrients. You need to be calm. You need to be in balance. Harmony spiritually lies with whatever you call your bigger guidance system, so you don't feel alone. So you can do what you do well, but also be in gratitude, help others with whatever gift you've gotten. Because it's not ours. It drives me a little wild sometimes when people think, I did this. I'm like, who created you? That was a partnership. I'm not even saying parents, like who gave you that gift? A lot of times a grandfather had it, or who passed on that whatever. Yeah. Anyway, and you get balanced, and then you're so much happier. I work with a lot of, really wealthy people who are so unhappy because intimacy is on the being side, Yeah. So it's just, money can't buy what's on the right side. And that's where I think we fall into the most strife. Yeah.
That's really good. That's good. That's really good. Money can't buy what's on the right side. Wow. That's great.
That's a first too. That's your show.
That's the scoop.
Created that. That's
the scoop. That's great. So just to kind of touch on what you're saying and something that you said earlier, as a child, like, why do you think that our intuition gets stifled at such a young age?
You are amazing. Because we were in a patriarchal culture so long, in the masculine culture, so it's all about doing it external. You'll see it in healthcare and everything. I think we've been very scared of women's power and feminine power for so long, and our culture's really just squashed it. Yeah. Squashed it in children, so even when little boys are playing and little girls, they can't cry or really be who they are because they need to be externally seen and heard, and that's it. And that actually meant don't be seen and heard. So it's, our structures have been all patriarch. So healthcare, government, look at it. They're so broken because they're so egocentric and more in the masculine side. Nothing to do with gender. But everyone knows now, or should know because it's out, that if you want a healthy environment, society, you have to take care of the women. We don't do it, the feminine. So that's why I believe, and it's a big question, it's a whole conversation in itself, and I've had to learn to forgive because I was not happy about that for a while, and I didn't want to emasculate people, but I had to learn, oh my goodness, forgive, you know, even as a big culture. But we're here now, and this is exactly what we're discerning or so fearful about in this moment. It's such an extreme. Yeah. And then people with intuition were known as witches or whatever, right? Which I understand because maybe they thought something would happen, it did, and then everyone needs to blame someone.
Yeah.
right? Because that's the fight or flight or the warrior. So it's a big old mess that I think we're ready to clear and just let go. But that's why, yeah, it's pretty factual once you look at it. But it's interesting when people like to fight me on that fact. I'm like, it just is.
Well, but
Science is
and
proving it as
having
well.
and being that, that in tune, how often do you find that, people around question that, or they think that it's, bogus, or that it's like woo woo or whatever, they think it's totally otherworldly. How do you deal with that sort of feedback?
So it used to be hard. I've definitely strengthened up over the years, and also somewhere around 2012 where it's been in this new time. So it's all easier. It's more graceful, if that makes sense, the coming out.
Yeah.
So it's been a plight for me for sure. But I will tell you this, once you become more intuitive, the ones who yell the most that it's woo-woo or not real, they know it's real, and they're scared that you're going to see them. So it becomes really easy to be like, the ones that fight me the most, that come at me, are the most scared. And so the neat thing about me being intuitive is I just say at first, I'm not going to read you, or whatever. I'm respectful. And then if they fight me, like, show me, prove me, I say something that usually can be not too embarrassing. It's whatever shows up in their aura, but something kind that just checks them, like, I see you, so why don't you don't want to go here.
Right.
I'll embarrass you in this meeting. So I've gotten braver with that. That's helped. But for the ones that really are scared religiously or whatnot, it's sad. I think they're so brainwashed. And I know people listen going, no, I don't. I love God. But our systems are patriarch. Once again, it's the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. It's males. Even in monkhood or certain Buddhists, it's all males. It's still male.
Yeah.
And I love Buddhism. I love Hindu. I love all religions. For they have truth in them, but they're so in the root, and they're about control and about black and white. Someone's good, someone's bad. This is our God. This is your God. It's young. So when I see that, I just know the people are young. They want someone to look up to or something. They want to give their power away. And lastly, and people freak out when I say this, but Jesus came in really early in readings, especially people who believed in Jesus. It was one of their icons in the aura. He always came through as a brother, never a savior. He wasn't a Christian. Christianity started 1,000 years, if not more, after he passed. So it's just food for thought about the truth. I'm not saying change your religion. We can enhance all these religions, but bringing the feminine side in and not putting Mary or women away. Mary didn't even get to have sex. I'm like, the whole thing, I'm like, what is really happening? Like, female did not, So I'm like,
oh, wow.
This isn't fair. Yeah.
I've never actually thought about that.
Right? I'm like, oh, women got nothing. So the feminine side, even of like pastors and leaders, I'm like, and many of them abused, as you know, and I think you've read that about me. I've had a lot of abusers, and so they don't want this to be real. They don't want anyone in their congregation to have strength and love. It's such an irony. However, the people that follow, that's okay as long as you have your own power in yourself, which is the belly. And a lot of women, even I think it's being rude, they become powerful powers that like word like, who do you think you are? But that's the gut, and you have to have power in your gut, even for just digestion. Yeah. Power is an energy, right? Heat. Yeah. Worth's the big one. So people, it's been, woven in. And so I see that in people. And if they're really kind and mean well, I just leave it alone. If they check too much, then I just give them a little, opening to say,
give them a little
opening.
You give them a little opening. That's good.
Learn a new thing.
Yeah. So where does our, and I know that on your TED Talk, you talk about this, but maybe you can share it with our listeners. Where does our intuition live in our bodies?
Oh, this is so beautiful. I love your evolved questions. A lot of people think intuition's in the gut, meaning the belly. And I do think there's sensory there, right? There's instinct there, because that gut's part of the self or the ego. But I believe intuition really is there's a part of the brain that collects it. But when your heart is open, your heart is a vibrational organ that understands things to a great degree. People fight with me sometimes and say, it's the brain sending the heart message. And I do think there's a little more to it, but I hear everyone that the brain's catching something and then the heart's responding. Mm-hmm. However you look at it, heart is so important, because I think it's the centering between the gut and the brain, if you want to look at it that way, and it's feminine. that's a feminine chakra, the heart. So it really is a connector. And then the heart's also the connector to our upper energy centers that are connected to the divine or heaven or all that is, or wisdom. So if you don't have the heart open, like Jesus and Buddha and Maya Angelou and Nelson Mandela, everyone talks about, you don't connect to the energy centers or the part of you that can experience heaven on earth, that has all the knowing. And that's many try to share because they want to stay a leader. They're all ego, which is the first three energy centers. Like, don't tell people, so they keep coming to a person, meaning them, or make them come to me to get to God. And it's just not true. I sometimes joke it's like selling tickets to heaven, and no one really knows. But if you open up the heart, that's your ticket in through intuition. So to answer your question, I do think it's in the brain, the knowledge of it, and kind of the antenna to get it from the sky or vibration or earth, however you want to look at it, or God. And then the gut, but the gut is really a translator, or kind of instinctually wakes us up to pay attention. And, there is some of that brain chemistry, or whatever people want to say, in the stomach region.
Yeah.
So I do think it's there too, but it's the combo, I think, partnership again, and then the heart really being that kind of sensory or gatekeeper.
Yeah.
And,
I love that.
And you all, and everyone listening.
Yeah. And I think that's so great to be able to, identify those things and in those centers in the body. How do we know when it's our intuition telling us something or our mind telling us something?
So good. So it's similar to when you're younger. If you can pause, that's always first. Stop your body. You're not going into, people say I go on a run and I'm intuitive. I'm like, you're in the part of your brain, you're moving. So it might not be fight or flight, but you're in movement. You're focusing on not tripping, not going in the street. So maybe something will be in the background, but we can only really do one thing at a time. So I say pause, center. So even if you visualize, if you're visual, okay, I'm going to center and focus on that part in the middle of my brain, or the end of my nose, or my belly button. I'm centering my body and my attention. So I'm hearing left brain, but I'm also hearing right brain. I'm like centering it, almost like being a parent with a kid at each side, or you want to look at it. I'm centering so I hear right. So then you let the small voice within rise, and you calm your loud voices with your left brain, your amygdala and all that going, or whatever part. I could be getting some of this wrong, medically. Go to a doctor for those details. But pause, one, breathe deep, two, and then ask. And it's kind of that asking, and ask and you'll receive. Now, what happens a lot for people is you'll get the answer before you finish the question, even in your thought, even quietly, and then ego comes in. So it's just like when you were a kid and you knew the answer was B, but then you rationalized it's C. Your body knows. So let it come, and you got to practice it, because it's a small voice within, especially as Quaker energy says, or you hear it spiritually all the time. It could have been louder if we listened to it since day one of birth, but we learned to quiet it down even more.
Yeah.
So I don't think it always was quiet. I just think we quieted it. And then you get to let it grow and hear it, and it's like a muscle. It grows. So that's that part. The other part I often say is people say, oh, I got knots in my belly. Like, knots are not good. That's usually a no.
Yeah.
Excitement can be a yes. Like, fear and excitement are very similar. A dear friend of ours, Billy Gallo, would say to me before, so I could learn to go on stage because I did not want to. He's like, think of being excited instead of nervous. I loved that. So you'll start to see your different feelings in your body. Okay, that's excitement. That's nerves because something good's going to happen, not, something bad. You start to learn your different sensory. You do learn a positive excitement versus a negative fear, so to speak, or it's all good because it's all information. But to answer, if you can pause and then ask yourself, you'll learn yourself better. And then we make these little meditation kits, but you can take a piece of paper and write down when you've had a dream, or when you knew something, or random thoughts in your brain that you're like, why does it show blue truck? Write it down, because you'll see it's coming from a different part of your mind, which I know takes a little time, but then you start to understand where things are coming from. And then if you wrote it down, I even forget. And then someone's like, Jill, you said blue car, and look at that blue car. And even the Jill and me's like, oh, I didn't even cognitively remember that. And that's what happens as we age. And, we're thinking about so many things, and we have so much sensory coming at us. So trying to get you to understand the sensory, that's intuitive. But so many people come and say, I knew to tell my friend that they have an awful husband. That's not intuition. Emotion and opinion is intuition. Maybe you got he's doing something, right? But intuition's not opinionated.
Right.
So you start to learn, wait, that was me. This part's, the intuitive stuff.
Right. Oh,
So
no.
it takes time. Lastly, I'll say intuition's not emotional, as you know, and as some have read and seen. So if it's emotional, that's your psyche, your ego, your past fears. It's your kind of nerve in you from something probably in your childhood. And brainiac-wise, really quick, the brain wants to clear when we have a memory or something. Let's say we're 6 and an uncle hit us, or something, God forbid, worse, or we had a fight with a friend and our mom or dad said, just be quiet and go on, right?
Mm-hmm.
We lodge some big of those memories like little pinpricks, almost like little Google red circle pin dots in our brain.
Yeah.
And I think meditation and intuition wants to clear it. It went in, it needs to go out, but we never learn the out. Some people do who pray. That's the same thing where they pray it out. They know to take it to God, hand it over. That's a very similar thing. So some of the peace you see in prayerful people is that connection to their God, which is lovely.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, we have things stuck from our past, and then a friend does something, and we think it's the friend, or we don't like the friend's husband, or we don't like the president, but really we're mad at our dad, and the president reminds us of our dad from when we were 4. So it's about getting under that really, then you can tell when something's intuitive because you've cleared out your past. That's a whole other conversation, but that is why that chapter 2 is key, and people don't like it. I'm like, the book gets better, keep going.
No, it's hard. It was hard. It's funny that you're saying that because you're right. Yeah. No, it's but I think we have to be able to face those things and like do that hard work in order for us to grow, right?
Yes, and then it leaves when you do it well and never comes back. It's gone. It's cleared. You've handed it over, right?
Yeah.
Never to happen again. You're not going to be a kid again. Yeah.
You're not going to be a kid again. No, you're not.
You're not going to be a kid again. So, you don't have to when you're adult, let people treat you a certain way anymore. And we accidentally do because we're conditioned.
Yeah. One of the things that I did want to talk to you about as well is creating healthy boundaries, right? So part of doing what I do as a yoga teacher and meditation and life coaching is being able to set really, good boundaries with the people around me. And I know that you speak to this in your book, and having healthy boundaries and how it involves 3 specific criteria. And because it's a subject that I feel like I hear a lot, people not knowing how to set healthy boundaries or not knowing who they need to set healthy boundaries with. So I was hoping that you can speak to this a little bit and maybe give us some tips on how to do that.
Yes. I love this segue because until we know ourselves a little better, we can't create boundaries because we don't know why we're acting like we are. I just noticed this in me the past 2 days. I was letting certain energy, I think, would come really submissive to a friend or do something or be bullied a little bit even by like a landlord or whatnot. And I thought I had cleared some patterning from my childhood that I'm like, okay, I'm maybe 70% there, 80% there, but I'm not all the way there because I'm noticing I'm attracting the same type of energy. I'm subconsciously happy when that happens, not happy. It feels normal, right? So you cannot set boundaries until you have your feet in the sand or on the ground, like roots in a tree. A tree can't condone its space until we're centered and grounded. So I know that's not the sexy part, but we cannot have healthy boundaries until we get to the root where we see where we're cracked, right? Because then we set a boundary and the boundary is going to be cracked or easily moved because it's based on like earthquake or, it's based on quicksand, right? So remember that about boundary. Boundary is a 3rd energy center thing. So we have to feel self-worth. We have to feel self-assertion, especially females. That is not liked in our culture. We're accused of so much when we create a boundary. And then if you create a boundary in a relationship that's already been set, people don't like change. They don't like the boundary subconsciously, right? Their soul does, but their self doesn't. And then you often get resistance because then they're coming at you from their left brain. they're warrior of like you're moving something, right? And it's just fear. It's fear you're going away. You've changed. And so when I talk about boundaries, as you know, we have to be verbal about it. Not we talk them for 3 hours about that you're setting a boundary, just like reassure the person, this is where you are now. I think that's really key, and that's something newer in these times we can do. Meaning, like, oh, thanks, that doesn't work for me today, and then you can be brief, and then if they say why not, you can say, oh, because this is what I'm doing. Taking the I and the ownership is really important. Instead of, well, you're this way, that's why I'm not doing this or
Yeah.
am doing this. So the I, that's one part. That's big. You and I talk, or about. I feel like we've already energetically talked about this.
I know,
Very well the gut element, right? I know we have. I'm like, what I just said.
Yeah, it's true.
Pardon your listeners. See where I'm too feminine, you all. That's why I have to come down get in the grounding, the masculine side of me. Really, meaning rooting down. It's very important that we take care of our gut health because that's where boundaries are.
Yeah.
Around your belly button or in your stomach lining. And yellow foods really help. The breathing, clearing out old energy helps because then, remember when we're nervous, we breathe really shallowly. You can't create a boundary. You're like, you have to breathe deep and go, oh, this is great. This works. But for boundaries, I want everyone to remember what's good for you really is good for the other person, even if it's a parent or a mother-in-law or a father-in-law or a child. It's like, no, I don't like that boundary. It is good for them. If it's good for you, it's good for them.
Yeah.
We forget that. We are really evolved mammals who will still walk into danger because we've been conditioned to. So people don't like the boundary, even though it's good for everyone. That's really big. The yellow foods are big. Is there other element I should say? This is your listeners, I think, are a little more evolved. So is there any other part that we should mention about the boundary? Centering, getting out of fight or flight is you have to do before you set a boundary because you don't want to be fighting or thinking you're protecting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big thing that happens. A lot of people think boundaries means this is what works for me and I'm claiming my, territory and you hurt me. But that's childish. That's rude. A true boundary is this works for me. It doesn't keeping a relationship professional. If you're at work, not bringing in too much emotion is big. If you're working with a parent, really seeing them and understanding they were a child at one time. So however they treated you, they probably learned. It's centering the mind so you don't get in your warrior of like, you've hurt me, I hate you. And so I'm setting a boundary. It's really important because then you trap your hate in your aura or your fear or your anger. That creates so much mental disease, which I know is another subject. But rooting down, centering, then set your boundaries key. And I think we didn't teach that in our life coaching in certain aspects. Even in yoga, yoga is still pretty masculine, even though it's union. Om is masculine. And so we're still coming at boundaries one-sided in a masculine way where we need to bring in our very nurturing side, even for men, of I see you. And this is a good line for both of us. So I think Elizabeth Gilbert does this well. Brene Brown talks about this so well. Doing it with compassion versus anger or resentment. And compassion's heart, gratitude's heart. So it's a lot of what's the intention of your boundary that I'm really going to harp on in these couple years because we can't do these things if we're doing them from a logical, angry fight or flight way. Yeah. That's what we're going to get back.
Yeah, especially right now. I mean, I think that everything that you write about, everything that you're doing is so much of what we need in our society right now. That is where we can begin to find that unification of just our society and just each other, and what we're doing, because I feel like that's really lacking. And, I really am inspired by those light workers in the world like yourself that are doing that and talking about these things and tapping into that intuition and just that whole sense of being. You in the TED Talk, one of the things that you talked about was the difference. Well, you didn't talk about it, but you said that you were more of a beer than a doer, right? So I wanted to ask you how do we get from being a beer to being a doer, and how do we go from being a doer to being a beer?
Love it. So most listening, I'll say it's 80-20, 80% are probably doers. So for this question, everyone can ask themselves just what side do you want to open more? Mm-hmm. So if you are a doer and you want to be more of a beer, that's all the calming elements, all the right side, all the connection. It's hard for doers to slow down to be, because it's zero, it's no numbers, it's no knowledge, it's no words. So it's nothing you're going to find on the internet. It's really getting quiet and going internal and getting to know the internal you. So that's how you be more. And that can feel really hard and scary. I'm not saying do it alone. You get help, but who you consider a light worker,
Right.
so an aunt or a friend or someone, but someone who will see you and hear you and not dominate you because they're another doer. So fellow beers, stick together, find beers and be with them.
Yeah.
You'll learn it'll slow down. We were joking the other night with a dear friend, Shell, who has slow beauty, that you'll go more to a turtle pace, and people don't like turtle. Right?
That's true.
But you won't be late,
Right.
Yeah. It's like, oh, is she, smoking? Was she smoking or whatever? Yeah, there's that. But that's presence, right?
Right.
So you're going to learn more about presence. Another big one for doers is this is a great one. Look people in the eye. Kids, adults at the grocery store, it slows you down. People don't like it because the eyes are windows to the soul, and you will get information like, oh, that's the person I'm talking to, so I can't be rude to this server or to the, whoever we're dumping our energy on, because doers
Right.
dump energy. Doers dump, because you guys have so much left over with adrenaline high, low. I work with a lot of pro athletes. They dump on, we all know, they dump. We have to be careful about that. If you're overdoing, you're going to have what I call karmic runoff, because you're running too high. Where do you clear it, right?
That's
Where do you
so
hand
good.
it over?
Yeah.
So that's that. So eye contact is good. And then when you can meditate, as you well know, when you wake up in the morning, even for 2 minutes, and what you're grateful for, that slows you down. And grateful is a connection, because you're honoring something else more than yourself. Because a lot of doers are pretty egocentric, and we celebrate that. We paid a lot of money. We put it in the White House,
Yeah.
It's hard, because doers will feel, I'm getting out of the race, I'm losing my competitive edge. You're not in these times. This will help work, help your love life, talk about having it all. This is the way to get there. So there's that. The beers, what I say a lot is you need to start moving. Even if it's gentle, do something you never wanted to do that challenges you. So even if you're a yogi, go do a yoga challenge. If you like to bike ride, join a club, even if it's hard, even if it pushes you a little. For beers, you don't want to be in a panic zone, but a little discomfort is good, because you're upping your masculine, you're rising your belly, your boundaries, your fire, those elements. I'm far too much air and, prana and other things. I'm not enough of that energy. And so I have to work at that. So like right now I'm busy, and people go, yay, you're busy. I'm like, I do not like busy.
Yeah.
Like the Jill and me does not like busy, but busy is good. And I'm trying to honor that side and be more of a doer. So that's big for the beers. Also need to be very careful about eating more protein and vegetables.
Yeah.
For both doers and beers, but
Yeah.
avoiding sugar for both not avoiding, we can't avoid it, I don't think, in our culture, but having less of it and not having fake stimulus getting us up or even bringing us down. So a lot of doers smoke a lot of pot, and that's not good for the brain either. I hate to say it, because a lot of spiritual beings think let's smoke, but it's not good for you. It really breaks your body down and your brain down. It's not good. It forms neuroses in a lot of my clients. It's not good. Yeah, we think it's this medicinal thing in our culture, but I think we need it so desperately right now because we're running so high. But it's not going to really help your adrenals or your cells.
But do you think it brings
beers
people
up the
down
cell.
mostly instead of taking them where they need to go? Like,
Yeah, I think don't get me wrong. If someone has anger and you get prescribed it for a bit, I think it's a great thing. It's like I think drugs are drugs. So even in the medical world, I am a purist, as many know, and they feel guilty when they say I'm on whatever medication. I'm like, drugs are great to bridge. If you're going to go hit someone, it's good to do it. If you're depressed, you can't get out of bed. Yeah, it's good to have a little something to help you. But our culture, it's a big, huge, snowball.
Yeah.
You need one thing, then you need another. We avoid pain at all costs, and I think there's very positive pain, or someone just said yesterday, intentional pain versus unintentional pain. Dr. Jennifer Freed said that. I loved it, where we avoid pain, but pain is just energy that breaks through the wall. Sometimes we need to address our pain, and something like pot, you're not addressing anything. So there's that. Yeah. So to answer your question, I do. I think it
Yeah.
helps people come down, which is a good base. But then what are you doing there? If you're
Yeah.
eating chips and, Fruity Pebbles and
Yeah.
going back to sleep, what's that really doing? It's avoidance.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. I'm a
Yeah.
purist exactly like you are. I mean, it's as clear as I
Mm-hmm.
can keep. My whole sense of being is the way that I like to
Ah,
feel, and I know that for
yeah.
the people I work with, that's always a recommendation that I have. Unless of course, like Western medicine is incredible, especially people going through treatment. Like I have nothing against it as well. Like I
Yes.
feel exactly the same way that you do. I do
Oh,
feel that there are certain things that are gonna stifle us from finding the root cause of
yeah.
something, or like from
Oh,
expanding our emotional bodies out into the world, and really exploring the things that are creating obstacles in our lives. What area in your life do you feel the most free?
oh, you're so sweet. I feel the most free and loved with my family, so husband, children.
That's so
Yeah,
sweet. I
I
love
really
that.
do.
I
Yeah.
love that so much.
Thank you.
Um,
No, I do. Takes work, as we know, but it's free. I feel really free, probably because of that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I know
just
that
showing up, I should
yeah,
say.
and you
Yeah,
talk about it in the
yeah,
book too, but like, how does
yeah.
your gift work in the dynamic of your household?
Oh, I love you say it, 'cause this is for everyone, women or men. So you know your children really well, and you know you didn't really create them because they come with their little personality, and right,
Yeah.
and that helps a lot because then we just help. I don't know if we even help them, guys. Just help them not get hurt. We give them really good boundaries, of course, but we let them be who they are. So I think when you let your children be who they are, they let you be who you are, in the house is so harmonious because you're just not really escalated. We have very passionate kids. I mean, there are 4 Aquarians in our family and 1 Pisces. So yes, it can get a little rowdy. And I'm Italian, and my husband's a broadcaster. So not that we're always so quiet, but we're always. I mean, we are always aware and generally very happy. And then when we do get a little fiery or whatever happens, we come back really quickly. So it's just, yeah, it's helped there. It's also helped because I know what they need without over helicoptering them once again. So I really do let them walk home. I do know when to ask our oldest is now 10 son, and I know when to ask him how he is. I know when he needs carrots. I know when he needs protein.
Mm,
That's huge. I know when we're going, to 2 birthday parties and it's going to be, chaotic there, or I just intuitively sometimes know, what they need to go eat before, or what's going to help them. Or even we use it for birthday gifts, which people laugh so hard, but we know, like, when you're more intuitive, you are aware and you know what people need, loved ones and friends and family. And, so there's that. Not saying everything's perfect at all. I am so different than my upbringing that sometimes that's hard. My mom is not an emotionally open person. And
mm,
so I'm so open, probably part of the reason, because I was trying to draw that out of her and my dad in ways.
mm-hmm.
That's really, they're beautiful examples of
Yeah.
very kind, well-intended parents who, raised children in the 60s and 70s, or 70s for them, but who were doing the best but weren't emotionally, didn't know how to emotionally be there.
Yeah.
So once again, too, being intuitive helps you be emotionally there for your kids and loved ones.
Mm,
So it helps just across the board.
I love
Yeah.
that. What are some words of wisdom that you live by, Jill?
I one big term I say, or I believe, and I say to myself, is kindness heals. So for me to remember to be kind, because it heals me, it heals others. Even if someone, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're such a, ASS hole. So that's a big one. Sorry, just be frank. Because some of the quotes, wisdom to live by, some seems so fluffy, but that's a big one I use. I do a lot of, like, what's another one? Just, they just easy does it, or, be still. I say a lot of those, just piece of wisdom to remember to center and to laugh, laugh a lot. I don't know, a big one lately is, that rare is real, or some of these great terms right now, that just because whoever's listening is different doesn't mean you're not real. Just, if you walk out and there's 50 people that are doing it one way, they could be really conditioned. So don't think you're odd. You're actually being really real because you're being you. So
Oh,
that's a big one. And everyone has these great gifts of,
yeah.
that are meant to bring forward to make us such a beautiful world. And And if we feel odd or out of place, we tend to put them back down. We're still really stuck in that junior high energy. So a lot of these terms are to get up into the heart and understand, you're whole, you're amazing. You don't have to do or fix or change a lot. I kind of say it's all in you and maybe uncover it, those layers. Yeah, so that's the wisdom I live by. And then, music heals everything is the other piece, I think, so anything where there's flow,
where there's flow
is where the love goes.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Where
so
there's flow, go.
Yeah, wherever there's flow, go. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree.
That made a lot
I'm preparing you now for the last two questions. And part of what this is and what Radically Loved is and why I created it was, very similar to this idea that we all have unique gifts and we all have a purpose on this world. We're all gifted individuals. We have a right to be here, and either God, source, universe, a God of your understanding radically loves you, right? So we are radically loved. So the question, two questions to you. The first one is, how do you feel radically loved? And the second is, what do you radically love?
Oh, I love it. Okay, so I feel radically loved when I show up and the universe and God bring in, miracles or synchronicities that I'm like, oh my gosh, it feels like, Christmas every day. So that's when I feel radically loved. I feel radically loved when our children or my husband looks me right in the eye. I feel like then I'm worthy of presence. I'm there. I'm being seen and heard. That's when I feel radically loved. You can tell what I radically love. I radically love love. Number one. Right. And I love, yeah. And then where there's life, where there's presence, where you can see, even if we've gone into a prison and we talk with someone and they get the sparkle in their eye about what they love or what they were like when they were a boy or girl, where there's life, where there's chi energy, where there's life force, because that's presence. I just love that. I love when people come together and, as you can tell, are kind to one another. I just love that when there's communication where people are hearing each other, because I think that's what bonds and makes this world such a better place. And, I love homemade desserts too. And peanut M&Ms, as people know. But I probably shouldn't put a lot of love into those, into those desserts. That's probably my adrenals and my cortisol. But yeah.
Well, we literally we literally just experienced your left and right brain working right now. Just
you did. I love you caught that. I was centered, I went right, and then I went left. It's like, oh yeah. And don't you love that? Because that's so in my training too, to go right, hold the center space, and then to be a smart aleck. This is left brain. I know. Working on it.
We all are, aren't we? Jill, I
Yes,
want to be respectful of your time, and I want to say thank you so much for all the work that you have done, for writing this incredible book that I completely devoured over the Pacific Ocean, and for just being a beautiful person in the world, and for what you're doing. I love you, and I hope that we get to do this again, and I'm so grateful for everything. How can we, or the listeners, contact you or be in touch?
You're so sweet. So the best right now is our website's jillwillard.com. It's a place there for contact. We have a meditation company. I am for intuitive meditation, community.com, and that'll be interactive soon, so we can have a lot of good conversations on that.
Cool.
Then Instagram is Jill_Willard. You'll just see pictures of the kids and a few events in there. And then we're not doing reading decks. We're trying to build the meditation company so you all can be so intuitive that you don't need me at all. You get to fly. But that's where we are over time. We're working and doing some, more stuff out in the media and whatnot. So hopefully you'll keep seeing us and finding ways to connect.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you, Jill. You're amazing. Thank you so much.
A pleasure.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. For more information, visit www.radicallylove.com/podcast to read all about today's guests or past guests. You can click on any of the links, or for more information, you can always follow me on Instagram at Rosie Acosta or Twitter at Rosie Acosta, and let us know what you thought.